Soldiers, Heroes of World War II is a hard game to nail down. It's really easy to love this game, but it's also really easy to hate this game, and it all depends on how you play it. Released before Company of Heroes and Men of War, Soldiers was the first realistic World War II game, and though very flawed, can be, with a little patience, very enjoyable. The game is broken into 4 campaigns, with around 5 missions each taking place across war-ravaged Europe. You take control of a small but mobile group of soldiers to undertake various tasks and operations of differing levels of complexity and scope. The British campaign has you take control of a commando squad as they steal a rocket system in the heart of France, while the Russian campaign is centered on the capture of a powerful missile launcher that can be used to help turn the tide of Stalingrad, so it's quite varied. But you have heard the same song and dance before, if not in a strategy game then definitely in the Call of Duty and Medal of Honor series. It has quite a bit in common with the Commandos games, though much more realistically focused. But what makes Heroes stand out is how freeform you can go with completing each level. Each map is much like a sandbox in the same way as Crysis or Far Cry, and even Deus Ex to an extent. Your small team of soldiers are grossly outnumbered and outgunned in nearly every virtual way, but they're quite a capable bunch. Find a working vehicle, they can drive it. Pick up a gun, they can fire it. Secure some artillery, watch the carnage. As long as you complete your objective and don't lose all your soldiers, you can do as much outlandish stuff as you want without any problems. Another difference from other strategy games is how you can directly control each unit. Though you can move them around without a hitch, accurate firing and movement is best done by going to the direct control mode. This is activated by holding the control key. You move with the arrow keys and aim and fire with the mouse, basically the same with any shooter you've ever played. The arrow keys are not the best setup, and annoyingly you can't change them in-game, instead you have to do it in the game's folder, which is pretty lame. Direct control is pretty much mandatory in combat, especially if you want to hit enemies from a distance or in cover. Though the AI will fire back, they lack good prioritization and resource management skills. This makes them pretty unreliable if you give them a grenade or a rocket launcher, since they're just going to use it on the nearest crouched soldier. But what's going to become very apparent very early on is that this game is brutally realistic and brutally hard. The realism of the game is strangely enjoyable and engrossing, since it affects your overall approach to each level and strategies you implement. Majority rules, you're going to spend a lot of time scavenging the environment for weapons and ammunition. You can't just fire away and hope for the best. It's about using your ammunition and correct weapon for the right situation. Your soldiers have an inventory system that can store weapons and various pieces of equipment like explosives. But the more you make them carry, the slower they'll move. So you have to be careful with what weapon they're equipped with, since if there's no room to store it, they'll just drop it. This can be rather annoying once they enter a vehicle, and just like that, you've lost your brain gun. There is a rather large arsenal of weapons, from different rifles to SMGs to heavy machine guns that require a good supply of ammunition. Be aware that most missions will carry the same equipment over to the next level, so it's best to scavenge anything you find before moving on. Vehicles act like their real life versions. They all use gas, which is finite. So getting a truck or a tank ready may require you to search for some spare gas cans and fuel in other vehicles. Same goes for ammunition. Only some ammunition will work for some vehicles, so you can't just jam anti-aircraft rounds into a tank with fingers crossed. Moving heavy tank rounds or artillery shells can be a problem for them being so large and heavy, but it's a really cool touch of realism. Foot combat is quite straightforward. You and the enemies can take cover in buildings and along the terrain. Though I found running at the enemy and firing away was the best action, since your soldiers can heal themselves with medkits if they sustain damage. But what's really different is the vehicle combat. Since a lot of vehicles are plated in heavy armor of differing strengths, you can't just fire round after round into them and hope for the best. Instead, it breaks down to quick thinking and maneuvering and using the right ammunition. When controlling a tank, which you do quite often, lightly armored vehicles like infantry transports in fortified positions like houses and bunkers require explosive rounds to knock them down. If you want to disable or destroy heavy armor, then you need armor-piercing rounds that can penetrate the plating. But that's not all. At the front, tanks are invincible. You're better off focusing on the turret, or better yet, the back. And that can change on what tanks are fighting each other. A Tiger is a hell of a lot tougher than a Panzer and will give a Sherman a run for its money. But a Sherman is far more maneuverable, so there's no real god weapon or anything. And while an infantryman's machine gun isn't going to do much against a tank, the grenade will. A small explosive can damage a vehicle's treads, totally immobilizing it, and a Molotov can light up an ammunition store to great effect. Without a doubt, the single most valuable piece of equipment is the repair kit. Though rare and hard to find, they can change the dynamics of a level in a heartbeat. When you come across a Panther tank, it's much better to disable it than destroy it, since with the repair kit you can fix it up as good as new and have a beast of a weapon available. You've already seen the extremely detailed environments. It really does feel like you're playing a tabletop board game. Explosions leave actual craters, and you can get bogged down if you're not careful. And if you feel destructive, you can run right through buildings. I said this game was brutally hard, and unfortunately it flip-flops between being something similar to Band of Brothers, then to the Dirty Dozen. It's unrealistic in how any soldier can wield any weapon and pilot any vehicle, or how some missions have you killing hundreds of soldiers and dozens of tanks with very little support, if any. But on anything higher than easy, every mission is a literal trial for you. The game tries to push you to play more tactically, except the AI isn't very good at handling complex situations. It can fire, sure, but they won't take cover or use appropriate equipment, even know which targets to engage with first. It's a literal nightmare trying to control multiple vehicles, since the AI will go ballistic at every building while ignoring the approaching tanks and soldiers with bazookas. Same for ground combat. Your AI will think in the way of, hey, maybe I should move out of the way before the tank turns around and rips me apart, but nah, I'm okay getting killed. So everything that matters requires your utmost attention, and this will lead to a lot of frustration and loads. There is a stealth system that is broken thanks to the enemy AI being too twitchy and your AI being, again, very unreliable. The overall lack of competency with your AI is what will fill a lot of your frustrations. You'll see them do something badass and totally dynamic, then moments later they throw a grenade that blows up your team. If you leave a soldier alone, there is no way to alert you that they're under attack, so it's easy to come back and see them dead with swarms of enemies around them. One mission could be brutally tough that requires a better part of an hour, while the next can be finished in a little over than 10 minutes. The absolute best I can recommend is putting the game on easy and save constantly, and just go around like the Inglourious Bastards. If you think you have the patience to put up with this game's difficulty, you'll find an extremely rewarding strategy game. There is a lot of cool content on offer, and actually playing as the Germans in their own campaign is considerably awesome. It's available online at Good Old Games and should work fine on modern OS systems.